Hi everybody and welcome to NorCal Slot Car Scene. In today's video we're going to talk about the motors that we use in 32nd scale slot car racing. Uh, this is a pretty big topic, so we're going to break it down into three separate videos. Today we're going to talk about the specs and the applications and how they're used in various types of cars, and then we'll go on to the racing aspect, the performance in part two, why you would choose one motor over another, and why one motor with a higher RPM rating may be actually slower on the track than another. In the last segment, part three, we'll talk about a brand new topic, that being brushless motors. Brushless motors are sort of in their infancy in slot car racing, and we'll discuss how they work, and if they have any application in 32nd scale slot car racing, or if they have any application in any other form of slot car racing. So let's get to the specs and applications of the motors that we currently use. There are four basic motors that are in pretty much every 32nd scale slot car, that being the FC130, the FK180, the Flat 6, and the FK050. Let's take a closer look at these motors. First of all, these are the designations given by the manufacturers, and typically we use a different name for them. The FC130 is commonly known as the short can. The FK180 is known as the long can. The Flat 6 is a proprietary motor from Slot-It, and it's used by some other manufacturers as well, but it's known as the Flat 6. And the FK050 is typically known as the slim can. Now, it's hard to see in this picture because the pictures were taken individually, so they're not really to scale within each other. But if you put them side by side, you can really see the difference. The FC130, the short can, is named because it's shorter than the others. And the probably the second most common motor is the long can. And you can see there, it's a long can because it's physically a longer can. The other two motors, the Flat 6 and the FK050, are also longer than the short can, but you don't see the differences until you go from a profile side. There now you can see that the short can and the long can are very similar in profile, but the flat 6 is definitely a little bit shorter, and that allows Slot-It to put them in some cars and give more room for the interior. The slim can is just a smaller motor. As you saw in the previous picture, it's almost as long as the others, but the profile is considerably smaller than any of the other three motors, so it allows it to be used in some different applications where size matters in terms of the actual car that we're modeling. Now let's take a look at the short can, and this is a Thunderslot short can motor. They come in various manufacturers. Slot-It manufactures them, NSR makes them, Scalextric and Carrera have quite a few, so they're in a number of different cars, and they come in different configurations. They come in inline, angle winder, and sidewinder, depending on the car. The configuration basically means in the inline configuration, the motor is going front to back. The motor shaft is going front to back compared to the rear axle. In the sidewinder on the right, the motor shaft is going parallel to the rear axle, so it's going side to side, hence the name sidewinder. And angle winder is right in the center. Angle winder means the motor is going at an angle. The motor shaft is at an angle to the rear axles, typically about 20 degrees or so. So the short can be used in those three different configurations. The most typical configuration for the inline with a short can is the Slot-It series of Group C cars, and most of the Carrera cars use this as well. There are not too many angle winder short can cars on the market, but Revoslot is the main player in this. All their GT cars, their GT1, their GT2, and the new Group 2 sedans all use the short can in an angle winder configuration. In a sidewinder configuration, probably the two most prominent players are the classic cars from Slot-It and Trans Am or full-body cars from Scalextric. The reason for that is the short can being small, it can be turned at that sidewinder angle and leaves more room in front of it for a 3D or a full interior. So a lot of the reasons for these are packaging to allow for scale appearance of the cars, which is one of the primary attractions to 32nd scale racing. The next motor, the long can, this is a Scale Auto long can motor rated at 21,500. is available in the inline configuration and this angle winder configuration. Now, because of the length of this motor, it will not work in a sidewinder configuration. It's basically too long. It will not fit between the wheel wells or allow the tires to fit close enough to have a scale appearance. So if we went to 24 scale cars, we could put this in a sidewinder application, but not in 32nd scale. There are not too many inline long can cars on the market, but there have been a few. NSR has produced some in their Mosler. The primary application for this is the angle winder. The new Scale Auto Hypercar, the Porsche 963, is in an angle winder configuration, and the Racer Sideways GT series of cars, which use NSR drivetrain, are long can motors in the angle winder configurations. There's more, but this is just a few of them that come to mind right away. Like I said, the Flat 6 is a proprietary motor from Slotted, and it's roughly the same length as the long can motor, so it is available in inline and angle winder configuration, and again, the sidewinder just will not fit. So when you look at the cars that use this, because it is a slotted motor, the first one that comes to mind are the LMP cars from Slotted, and this lower profile of the motor, again, makes it easier for them to put a 3D interior in the LMP cars. If you had the long can, which is taller, it would be much harder, and you just wouldn't get that scale looking appearance. Another application is the Racer Sideways series of Group 5 cars, because they use slotted drivetrains in their Group 5 cars. So they're using the angle winder configuration with the Flat 6 motor, which they obviously purchased from Slotted. And if you look at the Sideways Group 5 cars and the slotted LMP cars with the body off, they look almost identical, so they're using the same drivetrain. Next is the slim can motor. Because the slim can motor is a longer motor as opposed to the short can motor, it will not work in the sidewinder applications. So you find that in the inline and angle winder configurations are possible. However, I don't know of anybody that actually makes an angle winder with a slim can on the market. They've become very popular in proxy racing because they're very high revving, they're very lightweight, and so people think that this may be the future in terms of racing performance, which we'll talk about a little bit later next week. The inline configuration is the most predominant for the slim can, and you'll see it on the Scalextric, the so-called cigar-shaped F1 cars of the mid to late 60s, because there's just no room there. By using the slim can, they can make a very scale-looking F1 car, this is being the Lotus 49, where they couldn't with the larger motor. Polycar also uses a slim can motor in their series of classic F1 cars. Even though in this Ferrari there's enough room there, they've decided to standardize on that, because some of their cars are not don't have the side pods of this particular Ferrari, and the inline in the slim can allows them a little bit more flexibility in design in terms of the body of the car. Again, sidewinder not possible with the slim can motor. Now, when it comes to a lot of cars like Carrera and Scalextrics, the orientation of the motor is fixed. You cannot change it. This is a Carrera car with an inline motor. Carrera cars and Scalextric cars and that type of cars, the so-called homeset cars, do not allow you to change the orientation of the motor. It is what it is when you purchase it. If you go to something like a Slotted, they use motor pods. Slotted, NSR, all the what we call the higher-end hobbyist cars allow you to change the motor pod. So in this particular case, this is a slotted chassis that allows you to put an inline motor pod, an angle winder motor pod, or a sidewinder motor pod. Now, keep in mind, they all come from Slotted as one particular type. The Group C cars come inline. You can change them to an angle winder or a sidewinder. What you'll run into is if you change the orientation of the pod and change it, you may run into problems with the interior, and you may have to remove it or cut it up significantly to make an angle winder motor fit in a car originally designed for an inline style motor. Same with NSR. NSR is one of the few, though, that offers some of their cars in in multiple configurations. On the GT cars, you can buy them with an angle winder motor, which is a 21,400 RPM motor, and a sidewinder motor, which is a 25,000 RPM motor. And it's interesting that they have the higher RPM motor in the Sidewinder, and we'll discuss that in the next video about performance, because there are performance differences between the angle winder being the long can and the Sidewinder being the short can, that 21,000 may actually be faster than 25,000 on the track. NSR, even in their Mosler line, along the way, has produced the Mosler in all three configurations. The short can being in the Sidewinder, because obviously we've mentioned that's the only way you can do that, and then the long can is used in the inline or the angle winder. So they've actually produced Moslers in all three configurations. So there you have it. That's a real overview of the different motors, the four motors that are very popular in 32nd scale slot car racing. As I said, next week we're going to discuss performance and the differences between the performance levels of a long can motor and a short can motor. Why this 21,000 long can motor may in fact be faster on the track in terms of speed, may be faster on the track than a 25K motor. But maybe the 25K motor is a better motor to drive and will turn faster lap times. So we'll discuss all of that next week. In the coming weeks, we'll have the video on brushless motors. NSR has brought out a brushless motor for sale. There are other manufacturers that are making motors in brushless form. Brushless motors require a circuit board to control the motor. You can't just attach two wires to it like you do with a standard brushed motor. So this is a whole new ball game. We'll explain how it works, why it's better in some regards, why it's cheaper in some regards, why it's more expensive in some applications. This particular NSR motor is designed for very high-end 24-scale slot car racing, where the motors are $500 to $800 a piece, require constant maintenance, and you typically take multiple motors to the track when you go to a big race, where what NSR is trying to do is revolutionize this, where one $400 or $450 motor will replace everything you have and require virtually no maintenance. So again, that's upcoming in part 3 of this series, and that's it for now. Thanks for watching NorCal Slot Car Scene, and we'll see you all at the racetrack.